Hi, everybody. Jose Palomino, founder of Value Prop, and your host on Business Growth on Purpose. Our guest today is involved in the buying and selling of used precision machining equipment. He's also a podcaster talking to manufacturers all day, and he has some interesting perspectives on how to make life and business work for you. His name is Noah Graff, and he is joining us right now. Welcome, Noah, to Business Growth on Purpose.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, Noah Graff, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. Well, I have several things I do. I'm a number one, I'm a machine tool dealer. I buy and sell capital equipment specifically for precision machining, for turn parts. And I also have a blog. It's called Today's Machining World, and a podcast called Swarfcast, where we talk to more or less our customers, the people we sell machines to, and we learn about all of their challenges running manufacturing businesses.
Wow. Well, that's one of the reasons we're excited to have you on the show here, Noah, because that's kind of a window into a world that many of our listeners and candidly many of the client base I work with is usually that owner-led business, very often in manufacturing of some sort. So just a couple of questions. I mean, clearly the last 3 years have been a little, crazy, right? So as we have to move forward now. We're in 2023. What do you see or what are you hearing? And this could be, either through your sales process or as a result of your podcast where you're directly interviewing people. What are some of the things you're hearing that people are concerned about or particular challenges in the manufacturing world? Kind of ear to the ground. What's coming up?
Okay, it's very interesting. And I will not talk for all manufacturing. I'm only going to talk for precision machining parts manufacturing.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you trace back the pandemic, when it first hit, everybody was in the house of pain. It was like the worst year for Graff-Pinkert. We had to get PPP money. And then, and people started laying people off, our customers. And then everything just started roaring back, just raging. People needed more people. They needed more material. They had more business than they could do. And it was crazy. So then it went from the worst year for us to our best year. The last 2 years have been our best years. And for a lot of our customers, they've been their best years. So now we're getting into a certain murky area. And it's interesting because I feel like there's somewhat of a disconnect between Wall Street and the Fed and our world of machining. Granted, it's all connected and it all trickles down. Right now, most of our customers have more work than they can handle.
Okay.
They still need more people. They still need more machines. But, things trickle down, and people do talk about it. They do talk about interest rates, and maybe they're not going to buy another machine this year. Maybe maybe they're going to not buy the next building or whatever. But I mean, so what I'm seeing is expanding. I said that to a dealer friend the other day who was sort of getting a little more nervous. He's like, yeah, I'm seeing maybe some people selling stuff and whatever. And I said, well, all our customers seem to be hot. And he's like, well, those are your customers. They're the ones that are really successful. That's why they're buying machines. And I said, well, that's true. So it's hard to know, but what I'm saying is I'm seeing positivity. I'm seeing a little bit of healthy being on guard. But you have, people always need parts, right? And there's reshoring, people from China,
Right.
a lot of the jobs that people would send to China, they're taking the ones here. So that's another thing, why people need machines.
Well, one interesting thing though that I've observed, and I've talked to business owner conferences and things, and I asked this question in this kind of like upswell boom past, it was like a valley, right? Like things went really quiet, then they bang, like you said, roaring back, you said. But I also challenge, especially small businesses, smaller in the relative scale. Um, has all that business coming back been profitable? Or have you found that you're actually, you're paying overtime, having to hire people much higher than you expected to hire them, et cetera, all those things. So it's kind of like, what was it, about a year and a half ago, every used car dealer in America thought they became marketing geniuses overnight, right? Because of just, the rising tide, right? So I wonder, are you hearing anything from folks in, running these manufacturing operations, that they're concerned about long-term profitability? Is it the right business, or are they just saying yes because it was kind of quiet for a while and scary, so now it's like, oh yeah, I'm not turning anything away?
That's a good question. I mean, and there's inflation, there's um I think people are profitable. I think, again, they wouldn't be buying machines if they weren't. And it's been really good, just like for used car dealers, it's been really good for a used machinery dealer, because a lot of the new machines are just sold out. It's like a 6 month or even a
So it's not
year
necessarily
backlog.
a preference for use for some financial reason. It's like, you can make a machine available to me in 30 days, brand new, which might have been what I started with, won't be available for six
Yeah,
months.
it's both. It's
Okay.
both.
Okay.
Um, you know, it's so I think people are profitable. I haven't heard anybody tell me, "Oh, I'm spinning my wheels, I'm not profitable."
Okay.
I think, I think there's trickle down stuff, and I think it's just nobody likes uncertainty. And I remember before the 2016 election, um, everybody, it was business sucked. It was horrible. Nobody was buying machines, and after the election was over, it was like a switch was flipped. All of a sudden, everybody started wanting machines. Whether that was because of who won or not, I don't know. It might have had something to do with it, but I also think it's just, it doesn't even matter who wins. They just want they just want certainty. They just want
Right.
to know something is there, and then they'll go and start buying equipment.
And they can plan accordingly. Once it's when everything's up in the air, it's like, how do you plan? Do I plan? How do I
Sure.
expand? How do I even feel confident hiring or not hiring? You're always in that state of like flux almost. And,
Absolutely.
and
Which
that
is
brings,
interesting, though, because you figure during the pandemic, it's a period of uncertainty, yet business is great. So it's hard to.
well, that kind of dovetails to something we talked about in our pre-show conversation. And I like to just spend a little time with this, Noah, because I think it's interesting. Because some of that you could say, well, gee, then it's really just all up to, the winds of time will take me this way or that way, right? So often you could refer to that as good luck, or I think the term you use, serendipity, right? So
Sure.
and I know you've been thinking about that a little bit more in just terms of just like how, one is we're just subject to it, or two is a more active perspective where I can actually start shaping some of that good fortune by things I do or don't do. So
Exactly.
I think that's really
Yeah.
fascinating, especially in a world of like precision machining. And so you don't normally think of that as being, towards that. But if you could just
Uh,
comment on that a little bit, I'd like to hear more.
sure. Sure. Okay. So selling machine tools, um, half of it is the buying, maybe more than half of it is the buying, finding stuff. So you're constantly trying to buy and sell, and you call somebody up, um, or you go visit somebody's shop, and you come there looking for one machine, It turns out that machine sucked. You don't even want it. And then you see this other machine in the corner that it's like you had no idea they had. And then they're like, wait, you're interested in that? And you're like, well, maybe I could be interested in that. And all of a sudden you find this thing that's way better than what you came for. And so, you know, you can break it down to various things of keeping your eyes open for things when you're trying to find luck. I I interviewed this guy. He came out with this amazing book last year. It's called The Serendipity Mindset. The guy's name is Christian Bush, and he wrote this book about all these different things you can do to find to find luck in your
Okay.
life and in your business. So for instance, if you're a machinery dealer, or doing any kind of sales call, or introducing yourself to somebody, there's what he calls a serendipity hook. So for instance, if somebody asks you what you do at a party, first of all, it's probably not the best thing to introduce yourself by asking what you do. It's sort of like an evaluation thing, but whatever. You don't say, you know, hi, I'm Noah. I'm a machinery dealer. First of all, nobody's going to know what the heck you're talking about if you say I'm a
They'll
machinery
say,
dealer.
oh, that's interesting.
They'll go, oh, okay. Now, a hook is where you include other information into what you're saying. So you could be like, yeah, well, I'm a machinery dealer, and I also happen to have a podcast, and I'm an avid salsa dancer, and I've been salsa dancing for 20 years, and etc. So now you've given like four different hooks, different nodes to start a whole conversation. So say you're calling somebody on the phone about a machine. Hey, do you have X? Well, no, I don't have that. And you say, well, look, we also, our company, Graff-Pinkert, we're starting to do like business brokering. So I say, well, look, I'm on the phone with you. We also do this. We also buy and sell companies. Do you know of anybody looking to buy a company or sell a company? Boom. All of a sudden you call for one thing and you find something maybe totally better. So
Okay.
that's one thing that I learned from this guy. It's one way to find serendipity. Another way to find serendipity is what he calls serendipity bombs. So,
Okay, that sounds interesting. Serendipity bombs.
serendipity bombs is cool. So, like, you say you need to get something. You're I don't know, you're a podcaster like me, and you're looking to get some awesome people on your podcast, sort of dream guests, as they say.
Right.
You send, you think of like the 6 people that could maybe help you the most, and you send these Hail Marys out to them. You send 6 of them out, and you never know. Maybe, if you send 6 of them, you might be surprised. Maybe 1 or 2 actually come back. And if you didn't actually just try, just throw out these things. I had a guy yesterday or last week. He bought this screw machine, a Swiss screw machine from me. He was this guy in Idaho. He made rifles, and he he contacted me about a machine on our website. And it wasn't even a machine it wasn't even the right model. It was a model that was smaller than the one he needed. And so I talked to him, and I was so disappointed. I was like, oh shit, we've been trying to get rid of this machine for like 3 years. We bought it at an auction. It was horrible. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll keep my eyes open. And then I thought about it, and I was like, wait a second. Last week, my friend Randy, he was asking me about, he was another dealer. He said, oh, I have this machine. What should I do about it? And I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe you should get rid of this machine. Maybe it's not very good or whatever. And then I thought to myself, the next day after the guy from Idaho called, I was like, Oh, wait a second. That's the machine Randy has. Called up Randy on the phone. Randy's like, yeah, I still have it. I was like, well, what kind of deal can you give me? Oh, I'll sell it for you X, I'll give you 10% off. Called the guy in Idaho back. He's like, I'll take it.
Done.
And it doesn't always happen like that,
No,
but
but you kind of realize, I mean, and I'm sure you've been in business a long time, so I'm sure you've realized this before, but like the request you don't make is an automatic no.
absolutely. Absolutely. You see people who are, I know people, they talk a little too much. Some dealers are very like, they're like the town crier. They'll say everything, right? And some dealers are like really hold it to the vest. You don't want to tell any of your secrets, whatever.
Right.
And sometimes the people that are the most talkative, that I question a little bit, maybe you shouldn't be saying quite so much. But then by sharing all that information, all of a sudden something comes out in the conversation.
Right.
And if you hadn't said anything because you're so suspicious of that other person, nothing would have happened. And there's something called there's this other guy I love to study. His name is Robert Cialdini. He wrote, he's a social psychologist, and one of the things he talks about is reciprocity. So if you tell somebody else some secret that maybe you shouldn't tell them, then maybe they'll tell you a secret back that maybe they shouldn't tell you, which is another, I think it's sort of another serendipity kind of thing, where the more things you have out in the open, the more likely you're gonna, maybe this magic is gonna happen.
Well, do you find, Noah, it kind of in connection with that, what comes to mind is, at least what I've experienced in all the years of coaching people trying to ramp up their sales or their business development activities. I said, oftentimes the most powerful thing is being, one, you're talking about transparency, but being a little bit vulnerable and asking for help. And I find a lot of people just, as I mean, there are, like, let's face it, there's some rotten people in the universe, but there's a lot of good people that would prefer to be helpful if they could.
That is totally true. And people often want to help. It's incredible. They get this sort of feeling inside that, oh, you value me, you want me to teach you. And by them doing that, all of a sudden you become closer in your relationship, and it goes also the other way, where sometimes we'll do a favor for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day, I was looking for this one machine. It's called a Tornos machine, and I called up my friend. This is a Swiss guy in California. This guy named Jan. Probably shouldn't be using people's real names, but why not? And about a year ago, I tried to sell him these machines, these 3 older machines from a factory that was like right next to him in California. And I told him about these machines because he said he needed it. And then he kind of negotiated for them, and then the seller wasn't going to go down with it. And anyways, he knew where the machines were. And by the time it got to the end, we weren't going to make any money on it. It was like even. Everything was the same price, and we could have just been like, all right, well, fine, go buy them directly. But for some reason, he wanted to do it through us. It was like less complicated for him maybe to do it through us because they were coming from a competitor or somebody or whatever. So we did the deal for free. We processed the whole thing. Then this week, a guy was looking for one of those machines that we sold him. We sold him 3. I called him. I said, you have one of them maybe you want to get rid of? You weren't even crazy about getting all 3. And he said, yeah, actually, yeah, I think I can part with one, the worst one, but still, like, and there we go. The whole reciprocity. And I think you're totally right about helping people, asking people for help. And that goes back to the bomb, like you need help from somebody. You don't know until you try.
Right. And one thing I found, at least what I've observed being on the receiving end of sometimes request, a lot depends too. If you make a request that's let's call it, for lack of a better term, a humble request. Like, I'm just asking if you can help me with X. That's different than when it's kind of like a hidden demand in the form of a request, because I have an expectation. We've known each other a long time. I've helped you on 3 deals. Why aren't you helping me on this deal? That that just creates a whole different emotion back, coming back at you. So I think if you go out into the world and look,
It does stink when you've helped somebody and then you're looking for the favor back and they don't, but
it does, right? Well, and sometimes I look at it kind of this way. Maybe just interested if you see it this way, that sometimes it is a pay it forward kind of thing. In other words, if I'm always looking to be helpful in the world, I know that the people I help, not down to the individual, won't all be able to reciprocate, won't be able to, maybe not want to.
Yeah.
But in the long run, I have found a lot of kindness and goodness coming back my way just by being out there in the world a certain way.
Absolutely. That is, and that's something I try to remind myself, give more. Some people are just takers, and that's just
Sure.
the way they think. And you always wonder, how do these people stay in business so long? And some of them do. They just know how to do it. But yeah, I find if you can give in the right way, do the right kind of favors, it will come back. And it goes the same other way. If you're a jerk to somebody and you know we tried to help a guy with a machine. He asked for a machine. We knew where the machine was. We said, give us a commission if you go and buy this machine. We could have tried to be the middleman and do all this
Right.
stuff. We decided, hey, if you go to this machine, if you buy this machine, we want a $10,000 commission. He said, yep, I will. Later on, we find he bought the machine. Call him up.
He hasn't cut the check.
First, he avoids our call.
Okay.
Then we call him up again and we find him and we remind him. And he says, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Then he's MIA. We had already done a deal with this guy, a great deal. We're not going to do any more deals with him.
Right.
And if anybody asks me about him, I'm not going to say he's a criminal. There's only a few people you'd say that about. But I'm going to say, not a big fan.
Right. Right. No,
Long
absolutely.
game.
And that does what the old saying, what goes around comes around, is a true statement. No, this has been a really interesting, and I think for me, I love this line of thinking. It's
I hate to end on that negative one.
No, well, the good news is there's many more people not like that person. I have found in business. I think you have as well. So he stands out by being the exception. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
And
I agree, because if you just come into this world thinking everybody's going to cheat you, you're not going to do anything. You might as well not leave the house.
Well, there are people that won't leave their house because they're, you can't go into the world fearful. You do need to be aware. Like I tell my kids when in the city, I said, you got to head on a swivel, be situationally aware. But you also enjoy where if you're walking down the streets of New York, enjoy it, because it's something to be enjoyed.
Yeah, and now I'm gonna go down a totally different rabbit hole, but just one of the great things about the United States is our law and order. People throw that around. Yeah, what are you talking about? Our system is crap. Yeah, but if you go to Russia, they have no law and order. Over there, it's all just mafia or whatever, right? So they say one of the keys to having a great economy is law and order.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I mean, that's part of the reason why I think people are instinctively good, but at the same time, they also, I think that's another great thing about our country, which is a reason why it's so good for business.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, I mean, I've had Value Prop. I founded it 17 years ago, and dealt with so many different business owners over that time, and I've never had an experience. I've had, not everything has been like walking through the daisies, but I've never had anybody like not honor their contract.
That's
Like,
great.
it's just been straight up, so like that's been my experience. By and large, most people would rather do the right thing, but your point is right. But we live in a system where that's kind of the expectation that you're going
It's
to
the
do.
expectation.
It's the expectation, right? And that
It's
changes.
like paying taxes. It's our expectation here. It's so weird. We hate them, but we do in this country.
What you do. Absolutely. Well, Noah, if somebody listening to this wanting to know more about you, maybe your podcast and your business, just tell us where they would find that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, first, our business, if you're looking for buying and selling any used turning equipment, that's Graff-Pinkert. Just Google us. Our website for our blog about the precision machining industry is todaysmachiningworld.com. And if you're into podcasts, and I'm assuming people listening to this are into podcasts, we talk about a lot of the same things I'm talking about today. Go to Swarfcast. That's SWARF as in Frank, and then CAST, Swarfcast.
Fantastic. And we'll have that in our show notes as well. But Noah
Appreciate
Graff,
it.
thank you for being a guest on Business.
This was so much fun. You're a great interviewer. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Business Growth on Purpose. If you like the show, hit subscribe and leave us a review to help other people find the podcast. And if you're ready to take the next step in driving intentional growth for your business, come check out what we're doing at valueprop.com. We've developed industry-leading programs and systems to help B2B owners take control of their growth. Until then, thanks for listening to another episode of Business Growth on Purpose.